students. Today we discuss the animal associations. Regarding EAMCET point of view, from the animal associations, we are going to get minimum 4 marks. In 1 year, from the animal associations, we got 6 marks. In the animal associations, we are discussing different types of parasites. One we call it as Plasmodium, second one Tinea solium, third one Wuchereria bancrofti, and the fourth one is Entamoeba histolytica. Before going to discussing the bits, the small introduction regarding the association. In order to explain association, two organisms belonging to different species are required. Again it is repeating. In order to explain the association, two organisms belonging to different species are required. In the associations, the first one we call it as symbiosis. As we observe the symbiosis, two organisms of two different species live together for a prolonged period. Again it is repeating. The symbiosis. In the symbiosis, the two organisms of two different species live together for a prolonged period, that we call it as symbiosis. The word symbiosis is proposed by D. Barry. From the symbiosis, what type of associations are derived? One we call it as mutualism. In the mutualism, the two organisms are metabolically dependent. In the mutualism, the two organisms are metabolically dependent. The second one we call it as commensalism. In the commensalism, the two organisms are metabolically not dependent. The third one we call it as parasitism. In the mutualism, the two organisms get benefit. In the mutualism, if two organisms are separated, they cannot live independently. Whereas in the commensalism, if the two organisms are separated, they can live independently. In the commensalism, one we call it as commensal, the second one we call it as host. Always the commensal smaller than that of the host. What about the parasitism? In the parasitism, out of two organisms, one is beneficiary, the second one gets harm. In order to explain the association, two organisms belonging to different species is required. Here one interesting one. As we observe the relation between predator and prey, the relation between predator and prey, it is not an association, it is only interaction. Again it is repeating. The relation between the predator and prey, it is not an association, it is purely an interaction. And one example, another one is the EAMCETism. In the EAMCETism, two organisms are present. Definitely in the EAMCETism, one organism gets harm. Again it is repeating. In the EAMCETism, two organisms present. Definitely one organism gets harm. Now it is a small introduction regarding the association. While discussing the bits, regarding the bits, we have to discuss what are the other points associated to the associations. Now we observe for the first bit. Now regarding the animal associations. Now you have to observe the first bit. Commensalic microbe in the intestine of man. Again repeating. Commensalic microbe in the intestine of man. One is Mycobacterium tuberculosis. Second one Trichomonas vaginalis. Third one Escherichia coli. The fourth one is Ankylostoma duodenale. Now as we observe the Mycobacterium tuberculosis, Mycobacterium tuberculosis is a facultative parasite. It is a facultative parasite. What is meant by facultative parasite? As long as host is present, it lives as a parasite. In the absence of host, the parasite lives independently. That we call it as a facultative parasite. What is the best example for the facultative parasite? That is Mycobacterium tuberculosis. It is a bacterium. It comes under the kingdom Monera. Now as we observe the Mycobacterium tuberculosis, it causes a disease that we call it as TB or tuberculosis. The second one, Trichomonas vaginalis. Trichomonas vaginalis lives as a parasite in the vagina of female human beings. Now again it is repeating. Trichomonas vaginalis. It is a parasite lives in the vaginal cavity of female. In the vaginal cavity. The parasite lives in the cavity that we call it as coelozoic parasite. That we call it as coelozoic. What is meant by coelozoic? The parasite lives in the cavities. Here Trichomonas vaginalis lives in the vaginal cavity. The third one we call it as Escherichia coli. As we observe the Escherichia coli, it is the classical example for endocommensalism. What is meant by endocommensal? It is the commensal lives inside the host body. Now as we observe the Escherichia coli, it lives in the colon of man. In the colon, it feeds on undigested food materials and performs reproduction. But here one interesting one. As we observe the Escherichia coli, whenever the Escherichia coli number exceeds 1 lakh, again it is repeating. Escherichia coli, no doubt it is endocommensal. It does not cause any harm to the host. Here the Escherichia coli is the beneficiary. Man neither beneficiary nor harmful. But whenever Escherichia coli number exceeds 1 lakh, the human being gets diarrhea. The fourth one is called Ankylostoma duodenale. Ankylostoma duodenale lives in the cavity of intestine. But here the question is, what is the commensalic microbe? The correct answer is the Escherichia coli. Now we go for the next question. Number of individuals acting as parasites are 2 in an association, where the number of hosts are also 2, but the total number of individuals are 3 in. Again repeating, number of individuals acting as parasites are 2. That means regarding this question, number of parasites 2, where the number of hosts are also 2, but the total number of individuals are 3. Now as we observe this question, in the types of parasites, one type of parasite we call it as hyperparasite. One type of parasite we call it as hyperparasite. Now this is called the toadfish. In the urinary bladder of toadfish, what is present? Spirospora. It is a nidosporan parasite. It is a parasite lives in the urinary bladder of toadfish. It is host. Spirospora polymorpha, it is a parasite. Now, on the Spirospora, another parasite is present that we call it as Nosema notabilis. It is also a nidosporan parasite. And now, this is known as hyperparasite. Why it is called hyperparasite? What is meant by parasite? One parasite lives as a parasite on another parasite. Now in this context, how many individuals? Toadfish, Spirospora and Nosema. Here how many parasites are present? Nosema and Spirospora. Now here how many hyperparasites are present? Only one hyperparasite. Here what is the host of Nosema? Spirospora. What is the host of Spirospora? The toadfish. Now regarding this question, the number of individuals act as parasites, Spirospora and Nosema. It is parasite, it is hyperparasite. Their number is 2. Here the number of hosts 2. One is Spirospora, second one is toadfish. Now based on this information, what is the correct answer for this question? That is hyperparasitism. The second option is parasitism. What is meant by parasitism? Association between parasite and host. Now between Spirospora and toadfish, the association is parasitism. The association between Nosema and Spirospora, that is hyperparasitism. What about the endocommensalism? We discussed already. Endocommensalism means association between endocommensal and the host. The best classical example is Escherichia coli. What about the mutualism? In the mutualism, the two organisms are mutually benefited or metabolically dependent. Now for this question, the answer is the one hyperparasitism. Now we go for the next question. More appropriate meaning of symbiosis. Again repeating, more appropriate meaning of symbiosis. And now, what is the first statement? Symbiosis is a prolonged association of two or more organisms living together of the same species with or without mutual benefit. We have a good idea regarding the association. In order to explain the association, we require minimum two organisms. The two organisms must be belonged to two different species. But here what is the first statement? Symbiosis is a prolonged association of two or more organisms living together of the same species. While explaining the associations, we should not consider the same species. So that the first statement is not correct. Now we go for the second one. The what is meant by symbiosis? Symbiosis means the organisms living together of different species in close association with or without mutual benefit or harm. We are having a good idea regarding animal association. Mutualism, two organisms of two different species. Commensalism, two organisms of two different species. Parasitism, two organisms of two different species. In the mutualism, both are benefited. In the commensalism, one is beneficiary, second one is neither beneficiary nor harmful. What about the parasitism? No doubt one organism is beneficiary, second one almost all gets the harm. So that here what is meant by symbiosis? Two organisms belonging to different species live together for a prolonged period. In this association, both may get benefit, or one is beneficiary, second one neither beneficial nor harmful, and in the third one is beneficiary, second one almost all gets the harm. So that what is the more appropriate meaning or the definition of symbiosis is? Symbiosis is the living together of different species in close association with or without mutual benefit or harm. So it is the more appropriate meaning for the symbiosis. And the word symbiosis is proposed by D. Barry. From the symbiosis, what type of associations derived? Mutualism, commensalism, parasitism. Now here what is the correct answer? That is the second statement is the correct. And now go for the next question. Assertion. Chlorohydra viridissima. Again repeating. Chlorohydra viridissima. One is the genus name, second one is the species. It is the binomial nomenclature. Can survive longer than other species of hydra when stored under the similar conditions. That means during the starvation. What about the reason? Green algae which lives in the nutritive muscular cells of endoderm of green hydra supplies the products of photosynthesis to the latter. Now, as we observe the chlorohydra come under the class Hydrozoa. Chlorohydra come under the class Hydrozoa. As we observe the class Hydrozoa, in the class Hydrozoa, this one we call it as gastrovascular cavity. The gastrovascular cavity is also called coelenteron. The gastrovascular cavity is lined inside by endodermis. The endodermis here also called gastrodermis. Why it is called gastrodermis? Because the gastrovascular cavity or coelenteron is lined by endodermis. Here the endodermis is called gastrodermis. Now the gastrovascular cavity is also called the alimentary canal. In the kingdom Animalia, alimentary canal first developed in the phylum Cnidaria. But here as we observe the alimentary canal, it has only mouth, no anus. The mouth itself acts as anus. Now in the endodermis, variety of cells are present. One we call it as nutritive muscular cells, NMC, nutritive muscular cells. In the nutritive muscular cells, what is present? The Zooxanthellae. Here what is the Zooxanthellae? It is the green alga. Now the association between Zooxanthellae and chlorohydra. Here the Zooxanthellae is a plant material. What about the chlorohydra? That is the animal material. Now here the mutualism explained between animal and plant. During the starvation in the class Hydrozoa, if all are going to die, chlorohydra viridissima can survive even in the starvation because in its body, in the nutritive muscular cells, Zooxanthellae present. The Zooxanthellae performs photosynthesis and produces or develops or prepares food materials. Those food materials are supplied to the chlorohydra. So, even in the starvation, in the class Hydrozoa, what is the species is going to survive? That is chlorohydra viridissima. Now here, as we observe the answer for this question, both are correct or explains A. Now we go for the next question. Which of the following is histozoic parasite? Now as we observe the types of parasites. In the types of parasites, endoparasites, one category we call it as histozoic. Now what is meant by histozoic parasite? It is also called intercellular. It is also called extracellular. What is the other name of histozoic parasite? Intercellular or extracellular. What is meant by histozoic? The parasite present outside the cell, or the parasite present between two cells, or the parasite present between organs, or the parasite present between the organ systems, or the parasite present between the tissues. So histozoic parasite is also called intracellular or extracellular. Now here what is the question? Which of the following is histozoic parasite? Now one example is Trichomonas vaginalis. Trichomonas vaginalis lives in the vaginal cavity. So it is a coelozoic parasite. Second one, Plasmodium vivax. It is in the RBC of man. That means it is inside the cell. So it is called cytozoic or intra. The third one is Ochraria bancrafti, that lives in the lymph vessels, lymph glands or lymph nodes of man. So that here the appropriate answer for the histozoic parasite, that we call it as Ochraria bancrafti. Ochreria bancrafti lives outside the cells or it lives in the tissues. So here what is the correct answer? The Ochreria bancrafti. Now we go for the next question. It is difficult for scientists to produce vaccines against malaria, where we have to discuss this concept. In the animal associations, we already learned regarding the animal associations effect of the parasites. Because of the parasite, the body size increases. Because of the parasite, the sexual nature modifies. Because of the parasite, a new tissue develops. All these are discussed in the effects of the parasite. But here what is the question? It is difficulty for the scientist to produce vaccines against malaria. Why? As we observe the life cycle of Plasmodium, the Plasmodium completes its life cycle in man in 3 stages. One is pre-erythrocytic, exoerythrocytic and Golgi cycle. In the Golgi cycle, as we observe, at one stage in the Golgi cycle, we have to observe the Schaffner's dots. What are the Schaffner's dots? The antigens. Schaffner's dots are red in color. They are called the antigens released by Plasmodium. But always the intensity of antigens is not the same. Time to time the intensity of antigens varies, so that till the date we are unable to prepare a correct antidote for the Plasmodium causes malaria. Now it is the difficulty for the scientists to produce vaccines against malaria because first one, Plasmodium produces different kinds of antibodies. That is not the correct. The second one, malarial parasite. Here what is the malarial parasite? Plasmodium. What is the common name of Plasmodium? Malarial parasite. Malarial parasite changes its antigens from time to time. What are the antigens? Schaffner's dots. What is the color of Schaffner's dots? Red. Time to time the intensity of antigens varies. So it is difficulty for us to prepare a correct antidote against the malaria. So what is the correct answer for this question is the second one. Now we go for the next question. The greatest adaptation for the survival of parasites is shown as. Now as we observe the parasitic adaptations. The parasitic adaptations are generally discussed with reference to endoparasites only. We have to explain the adaptations regarding the endoparasites only. As we observe the endoparasites, in all endoparasites the body is covered and protected by either cuticle or tegument. As we observe the endoparasites, in the endoparasites, the sense organs are absent. In the endoparasites, the locomotory organs are absent. Some endoparasites, to continue their life cycle, they complete their life cycle in blood-sucking insects. They are called the sanguivorous insects. Some endoparasites, in order to get protection against unfavorable conditions, they undergo encystment. In the endoparasites, almost all systems are not well developed. But in the endoparasites, what type of system is well developed? The reproductive system. Take for example, female ascaris. In order to protect its species, the female ascaris per day releases 2 lakhs eggs. As we observe the Taenia solium, in the Taenia solium strobila, as we observe the mature proglatids, in a bisexual mature proglatid, as we observe the proglatid, in the proglatid in the branched uterus 30,000 to 40,000 capsules are present. For what purpose the endoparasites release more and more number of eggs? To protect their species. So that in endoparasites, what is the greatest adaptation? The presence of well-developed reproductive system. Now based on this information, the greatest adaptation for the survival of the parasite is shown as, one is the reproductive system of Taenia solium. Second one, degeneration of carcinous gonads. What is meant by carcinous? A type of crab. Bisexualina, that is an example of parasitic castration. The third one is tegument microvilli. In Taenia solium, the body is covered by tegument. On tegument microvilli present, they increase area of absorptive surface. And the fourth one is the cystic stage is the infective stage to entamoeba histolytica. We are having a good idea in the life history of entamoeba. What is the infective stage? That is the tetranucleated cyst. Here, what is the greatest adaptation of endoparasites to protect their species? It means to release more and more number of eggs to protect their species. That is the development of reproductive system. So here, what is the correct answer? The first one, the reproductive system of Taenia solium. Now we go for the next question. In their host, hyperplasia, hypertrophy are caused respectively by the following. Here again you have to observe. In their host or in the host body, hyperplasia and hypertrophy caused respectively. And now this concept we discuss in the effect of the parasites. One we call it as the hyperplasia. What is meant by hyperplasia? Because of the parasite in the host body, the cell number increases. What is meant by hypertrophy? What is meant by hypertrophy? Because of the parasite in the host body, the cell size increases. Now, hyperplasia means because of the parasite in the host body, cell number increases. What is the best example for the hyperplasia? Fasciola hepatica. It lives in the bile duct of sheep. In the bile duct of sheep, because of the hyperplasia, the cell number increases. What about the hypertrophy? The cell size increases. In the life history of Plasmodium, in the Golgi cycle, the Plasmodium present in the RBC, at one stage the RBC size enlarges. That we call it as hypertrophy. Now here what is the correct answer? Hyperplasia, hypertrophy caused respectively. One is the cells of bile duct and cells of the blood. Second one, hyperplasia caused by Fasciola hepatica. Hypertrophy is caused by Plasmodium species. So here the correct answer is the second one. Now we go for the next question. Match the following. Now regarding the list one. One is ectoparasite. What is meant by ectoparasite? Parasite present outside the host body. What is intermittent parasite? The parasite temporarily lives on the host body. Take for example mosquito. It alights on our body, bites, sucks the blood and leaves. Bed bug. It bites, sucks and leaves the body. And leech. It sucks the blood and leaves the body. That is intermittent. What is the meaning of intermittent? Temporary. And now, what is the coelozoic parasite? The parasite lives in the cavities. Enterozoic parasite. What is meant by enterozoic? Here enteron. What is the meaning of enteron? What is the meaning of enteron? Nothing but alimentary canal. It is also called gut. Now what is meant by enterozoic? The parasite lives in the cavity of alimentary canal. And now we observe the list 2. Trichomonas vaginalis, Cimex, Ascaris, Pediculus, Trypanosoma gambiense. Now here regarding the list one, ectoparasite. The ectoparasite present outside the body. The best appropriate example is Pediculus. It is ectoparasite and permanent. Second one is intermittent parasite. The parasite lives temporarily on the host body. What is the appropriate answer for this question is CMX. If there is no CMX, we go for the mosquito. Now, coelozoic parasite. The parasite lives in the cavity. Here, what is the best example for the coelozoic parasite? Trichomonas vaginalis. What is meant by enterozoic parasite? The parasite lives in the cavity of alimentary canal. Here, the best example is Ascaris. What about the Trypanosoma gambiense? That is an example of histozoic parasite. What is meant by histozoic parasite? Parasite lives between the cells of the tissues. So, Trypanosoma gambiense is the classical example of histozoic. Now, based on this information, the correct answer is 1. Now, we go for the next question. Trichomonas hominis. Here, the Trichomonas is genus. Under the Trichomonas genus, so many species are present. One we call it as hominis. Now, as we observe the type of parasites, ectoparasite, parasite present outside the host body. What about the endoparasite? Parasite inside the host. What are the classification of endoparasite? One is intra, parasite inside the cell. One is inter, parasite outside the cell. Coelozoic, parasite inside the cavities. Hyperparasite, one parasite lives on another parasite. What is meant by pathogenic parasite? The parasite causes harm to the host. What is meant by non-pathogenic? The parasite does not cause any harm to the host. Trichomonas hominis, no doubt it is a parasite. It gets the food materials, the shelter, the protection from the host body. In this context, it is the parasite. But here, it does not cause any harm to the host. But from the host body, it gets the food materials, shelter, protection. So that the association between the host and Trichomonas hominis, no doubt it is a parasitism. Now here, Trichomonas hominis, pathogenic. Pathogenic means causes harm. Non-pathogenic does not cause any harm. Now what is the correct answer for this question? The second one, non-pathogenic. Now go for the next question. Read the following statements. The first statement, in the association between termite and Trichomonas. Again repeating, in the association between termite and Trichomonas, cellulase, that is an enzyme secreted by Trichomonas. Now, as we observe the mutualism, what is meant by mutualism? The two organisms metabolically dependent. In the mutualism, one organism we call it as a termite. What is the other name of termite? White ant. What is the food material of termite? That is cellulose. In the termite body, no cellulase enzyme. It is unable to digest the cellulose. But in the alimentary canal of termite, what is present? The trichonympha. The trichonympha. And Trichomonas species. In the alimentary canal of termite, Trichonympha as well as Trichomonas species are present. These two secrete an enzyme called cellulase. The cellulase digests the cellulose into cellobiose and glucose. What is the difference between the cellobiose, glucose? It is a disaccharide. It is a monosaccharide. What about the cellulose? It is a polysaccharide. Now, what is the first statement? In the association between termite and Trichomonas, cellulase, it is an enzyme secreted by Trichomonas. So, the first statement is correct. Second, chlorella. What is the meaning of chlorella? Chlorella. It is unicellular algal material lives in the nutritive muscular cells of chlorohydra. Because of the Zooxanthellae, the chlorohydra guards the green color. So it is called the chlorohydra. It is also correct statement. Third one, chlorella can live chemotropically in the darkness as long as light is available. No doubt the Zooxanthellae performs photosynthesis. Whenever light is absent, the Zooxanthellae utilizes the metabolites given by chlorohydra and prepares its own food materials. Again repeating, in the absence of light, the Zooxanthellae prepares the food materials using metabolites given by chlorohydra. Preparing food materials using metabolites or chemical energy, that is called chemotropism. Now the three statements are correct. What is the correct answer for this question is all statements are correct. Now we go for the next question. Pathogenic nature of Entamoeba histolytica is explained by, again repeating, pathogenic nature of Entamoeba histolytica. We are having a good idea regarding the Entamoeba histolytica. The Entamoeba histolytica discovered by Lambel. The pathogenicity is explained by the laws. The name Entamoeba histolytica given by Cosa Grandi and Barbo Gallo again repeating, Entamoeba histolytica, no doubt it is a unicellular parasite. Entamoeba histolytica causes amoebic dysentery. Hence it is called dysentery amoeba. In the universe, no human being is escaped from the Entamoeba histolytica. It means in our lifespan, we are going to take the contaminated food and water. Whenever we are going to take the contaminated food and water, definitely we are going to get the Entamoeba histolytica. The Entamoeba histolytica causes amoebic dysentery. Hence it is called dysentery amoeba. It was discovered by Lambel. Its pathogenicity explained by Lash. The name was given by Cosa Grandi and Barbo Gallo. No human being is escaped from the Entamoeba histolytica in his life history, because in our lifespan we are going to take the contaminated food and water here and there. Once we are going to take the contaminated food and water, no doubt we are going to suffer from the Entamoeba histolytica disease. Now here, what is the correct answer? Pathogenic nature of Entamoeba histolytica is proved or explained by the Lash. Now the next question is, diagnostic feature of infection of Entamoeba histolytica. Now repeating the question, diagnostic characters of infection of Entamoeba histolytica. And now, as we observe the Entamoeba histolytica, suppose one patient visited a doctor. Now the doctor asked the question regarding the patient, what is the problem of yourself? The patient explains, I have been suffering from the blood motions. In the motion, I am getting the blood and the mucus. Now based on these characters, the doctor examines his fecal matter. In order to identify the Entamoeba histolytica, what type of test is conducted? That we call it as stools test. What is the meaning of the stools? Nothing but the fecal matter. Now the doctor examines the fecal matter of the patient. In the stools, if the stools are acidic in nature, in the stools if trophozoids are present, in the stools if tetranucleated cysts are present, no doubt the patient has been suffering from what type of disease? That is amoebic dysentery or amoebiasis. Now, how can we diagnose the disease? Based on observing the acidic nature of fecal matter, the presence of trophozoites in the fecal matter, the presence of tetranucleated cyst in the fecal matter. What type of test is conducted to identify the entamoeba histolytica? That is the stools test. Now, based on this information, what is the correct answer? First one, the stools are alkaline with blood and mucus. Second, the stools are acidic with uninucleated cyst. Third one, stools are acidic with trophozoites, mucus and tetranucleated cyst. So, what is the correct answer for this question? That is the third one. Now, we go for the next question. Assertion. Musca domestica is a mechanical vector to the entamoeba histolytica. Now, as we observe the life history of entamoeba histolytica, the entamoeba histolytica is monogenetic parasite. What is meant by monogenetic parasite? The parasite completes its life history in only one host. Here, what is the one host? That we call it as man. The entamoeba histolytica completes its life history only in the body of the man. In the life history of entamoeba histolytica, as we observe the housefly and cockroaches, they are said to be the pseudovectors. Because in the body of housefly, the entamoeba histolytica never completes its life cycle. As we observe the fecal matter, on the fecal matter, the houseflies and cockroaches alight. Now, along with the fecal matter, the tetranucleated cysts are attached to the body of housefly and cockroaches. Whenever the houseflies and cockroaches alight on our eatables are contaminated. Along with the contaminated water and the food, we are getting the tetranucleated cyst. What is the infective stage in the life history of entamoeba histolytica? That is tetranucleated cyst. What about the housefly and cockroaches? They are pseudovectors, because in the body of housefly, in the body of cockroach, entamoeba histolytica never completes or never performs any part of the life cycle. So, it is the pseudovector. Now, what is the assertion? Musca domestica is a mechanical vector to entamoeba histolytica, because in the housefly body, entamoeba histolytica does not complete its life cycle. It is correct. Now, what is the reason? Entamoeba histolytica completes a sexual phase of life cycle in the common housefly. We should not explain the asexual cycle in the entamoeba histolytica. Always entamoeba histolytica completes its life history only in the body of the man. Now, based on this information, what is the correct answer? Here the assertion is true and the reason is false. Now, we go for the next question. Characteristic feature of pre-cystic stage of entamoeba histolytica which prepares to encyst is. Now, as we observe the life history of entamoeba histolytica, now this part we call it as colon. What is the colon? It is the part of large intestine. Now, this one we call it as the lumen. What is meant by lumen? It is the cavity of colon. Now, this one we call it as the wall. In the wall of colon, what is present? The trophozoite. In the wall of colon, what is present? The trophozoite. Now, the trophozoite undergoes reproduction and produces innumerable daughter individuals. This entire process is going on in the wall of colon. Now, majority of daughter individuals become the trophozoites. Some daughter individuals, they enter into the cavity of colon. The individual that enters into the cavity of colon, that we call it as the pre-cystic stage. This is pre-cystic stage. As we observe the pre-cystic stage, in this stage there is no cyst. As we observe the pre-cystic stage, it does not cause any harm to the man, and it does not perform any reproduction. It does not perform any locomotion. In the pre-cystic stage, the parasite does not perform any type of feeding. Again repeating, the pre-cystic stage does not perform locomotion, does not undergo reproduction, does not perform the feeding. Oh, how it survives? In the body of the pre-cystic stage, what are present? The glycogen granules and chromatoid bodies. Chromatoid bodies. What are the chromatoid bodies? They are rod-like. The chromatoid bodies are made by ribonucleoproteins. Now again repeating, in the pre-cystic stage, the parasite depends on glycogen and chromatoid bodies. Now here what is the correct answer? Presence of food vacuoles. In the pre-cystic stage, no food vacuoles. Presence of pseudopodia, no pseudopodia. Absence of glycogen granules, wrong. In the pre-cystic stage, glycogen granules present. And the fourth one, presence of chromatoid bodies. Based on chromatoid bodies and glycogen granules, we can identify the pre-cystic stage.